Okay, really busy today. Gotta go to a lot of places. And with that in mind, what's going on today? Actually, it's a topic that you guys brought up. Apparently, here in Canada, a lot of drones like the Autel ones are now illegal, so to speak, to fly in advanced controlled areas. Here in Canada, usually the way it works in terms of flying a drone in controlled airspace, it's considered as an advanced operation, and you can only fly drones that are on the official list in Transport Canada that's qualified to do so. For example, there are some as well that you can actually legally fly over people as well. Although keep in mind, this does not relate to things like micro drones and all that. So when you look at this list, initially there were a lot of companies on there. For example, ones like DJI you would expect, other big players, for example, like Autel. But with that said, all the Autel drones, as of saying this today anyways, are all gone, which technically would imply if you are flying those kinds of drones right now under an advanced operation, you're technically breaking the law per se. That's kind of how it is. I did try to find any variations of an Autel drone on the site, and as mentioned, it's completely gone. So a little bit more details, like they say on their site, choosing the right drone for advanced operations. When buying a drone, it's important to choose the right one for you. That means selecting a drone that is safe enough to do what you want to do with it. We developed a remotely piloted aircraft system safety assurance rating system to help us with this. So what is this safety assurance? It says here the RPAS safety insurance tells you what advanced operations your drone is approved for. For example, in controlled airspace near or above people, and it says you must operate your drone within the limits outlined in the RPAS safety assurance declared by the drone manufacturer. Manufacturers may self-declare to Transport Canada that specific models of drones meet the requirements for advanced operations. So there's the example again, like I mentioned before, where some drones actually, they have things like a parachute system and all that, so they can self-declare it as usable and safe in terms of flying over crowds and all that. And that's actually another example of how there's drones being taken off this list, because I remember before when I was researching, is there actually a good feasible drone, like a bigger one anyways, that you can actually fly over people? And one of them was that Swell Pro one, like that splash drone. I remember that one was in the news at times, that are being used in some areas of the world to drop things like life jackets. Like even that drone is off the list as well. So what happened? It would seem like Transport Canada requested, I guess, for more details from these drone manufacturers about their drones, and it would appear that they did not provide the proper information by the looks of it, and so because of that, they took it down. Like it says here, drones are listed only if they have an RPAS safety insurance declaration submitted by their manufacturer. If your drone isn't listed, the manufacturer may have yet to submit the declaration, or the declaration is yet to be reviewed. You'll be issued a new registration certificate if the declaration is submitted. It says contact your drone manufacturers to ask if a declaration will be submitted. So normally that should be a pretty straightforward procedure per se for companies, and you would imagine if you're a large corporation and all that, you would want to do this so people would actually buy your drones for these purposes, especially people using them for commercial purposes. And it also says RPAS safety assurance declarations may be invalidated after being listed below. If you have a registered RPAS that has been invalidated, you will be notified by email that it no longer qualifies for advanced operations, and you will be issued an updated registration certificate. So that's kind of interesting. It makes me wonder too on how many people have just continuously used like various drones that were on the list, like law enforcement, for example. Would you believe that if they were flying a drone that was now, quote, illegal? Now, with that said, when you actually use the official process here in Canada to get your drone approved to operate in things like controlled airspace and all that, they actually still list all of the things like the Autel drones, for example, even like those Swell Pro ones like I mentioned. So in that sense, I can see how a lot of people will just be oblivious to this and continue to go on as normal, like get your approval and all that, especially nowadays where with this procedure, a lot of the times it may actually just get automatically approved. So it's kind of a gong show if you think about it too. And I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to mention about in terms of this process on how manufacturers have to self-declare their drones as qualified and all that. You can even see on the list like with DJI drones, like you'd be wondering, what in the world? like, how is this a DJI manufacturer, like this design firm, for example? That's just the way it is, where if you, let's just say, want to fly a particular drone in an advanced operation and you have to go through this procedure to actually do that, it has to be self-declared on this page. So imagine you, for example, flying something like, even like a model aircraft. You're flying in a controlled airspace per se, but it's only gonna be in your backyard. And every time you build like a new type of aircraft, that's what you wanna say. So you have to constantly get this thing approved in this way to fly it for fun. That's just an example of how, I guess, short-sighted this process is, in my opinion. It might sound okay for people doing it commercially and all that, but it doesn't make sense in many ways for people flying it recreationally and all that. Although, with that said, again, keep in mind, this does not technically affect things like the micro drones. So if you're flying things like the Nano, for example, technically it should be okay. But in the end, I wouldn't be surprised if they get this fixed. It's just kind of interesting to think about on if there are people like commercial operators or even law enforcement like using those drones at the moment. All right, see you guys later.